Hello, my name is Russell Myers. Welcome to Issues Unite. So, looks like those M1 tanks will not be getting to Ukraine anytime soon. How soon will they get there? Well, let's take a dive into that because Politico already did actually look into this and offer a report. So in this case, I am going to be reading off something. So let's go to that. All right, so U.S. to send Ukraine more advanced Abrams tanks, but no secret armor. The secret armor is the reactive armor that if the tank is struck, it explodes. It's explosive armor that is supposed to repel the charge. But that reactive armor actually contains depleted uranium. And, that depleted uranium is not so great. You think about that. Depleted uranium, well, if these things go off, they contaminate the environment around the tank and the exterior of the tank. What that also means is that if the crew survives and they exit the tank, even hours later, if they're out of the area, the outside of the tank is still contaminated. That means the crew is going to be contaminated. And especially if they're on the battlefield, they're contaminated. They may well wind up with cancer. If they have children later, their children may be deformed. But it depletes it contaminates the environment for entire generations. So, so they're updating some of the weaponry on these, but not the armor. And even some of the weaponry is not going to be, the newer technology that is used in the American versions. All right, so let me read some of this. All right, questions remain over the timeline of when the Abrams tanks can be delivered to Ukraine. The tanks are assembled in one place only, a government-owned General Dynamics operated plant in Lima, Ohio. That facility can produce 12 tanks per month. But the line is now full of new tank orders for Taiwan and Poland. Orders that would be difficult and likely controversial to put on the back burner. Poland has ordered 250 A2 tanks that will be delivered starting in 2025. But in the meantime is receiving an emergency infusion of 116 M1A1 tanks recently retired by the Marine Corps. Warsaw asked for the tanks to quickly replace the 250 Soviet-era T-72 tanks that gave Ukraine last year, and the shuttering of the Marine Corps tank units made hundreds of well-maintained tanks available immediately, so they got second-hand stuff. Taiwan ordered 108 M1A2 tanks in 2019, and the first are expected to be delivered in 2024. General Dynamics no longer builds the M1 from scratch, but has a number of M1 seed vehicles that are bare-bone tanks. When new orders come in, General Dynamics modifies these seed vehicles with new technology depending on which variant is selected. But these new upgrades are not easy or fast. Rather than sending Ukraine tanks from its own stocks, as it has done with previous weapons, the U.S. has said it is buying the Abrams from industry, meaning they won't arrive on the battlefield for many months or potentially years, given industrial constraints in upgrading them. Unlike other tanks that use diesel, the Abrams has a jet turbine engine that guzzles JP-8 jet fuel, which is more expensive and harder to maintain. They are also tricky to maintain, and any crew error could trigger the engine to blow. Meanwhile, they require a massive infrastructure, including M88 recovery vehicles to repair broken parts on the battlefield, to operate or to tow it. That's what a recovery vehicle is primarily for, is to tow other vehicles, which is what I said in my last video. So, that is just, you think about all of that, how much this all plays into what I said in previous videos. And these things, it's not just Politico. This was also confirmed by National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby, who just, when he was asked how soon those tanks would be delivered to Ukraine, he just could not get an answer. He said many months. Many months. This is looking like 2025 would be the absolute soonest that they're going to get there. So what Ukraine will wind up with is 14 Challenger 2s from Britain, 14 Leopard 2s from Germany, and those, in both cases there, are basically refurbished stock vehicles. They're surplus and refurbished. Then they'll get 14 Leopard 1s from Poland, which in that case they're not even refurbished. So that's a total of 42 tanks. And Ukraine had well over 300 tanks at the beginning of this conflict. And, you know, the military commander in Ukraine said, well, I need 300 tanks. Here's 42. And like I said, the Strykers, the Bradleys, and all these other things, those are not tanks. Those are not tanks. Those are infantry fighting vehicles or, you know, armored personnel carriers. That's it. Lightly armored personnel carriers. They're buses to carry infantry to the front. Well, where are they at? Where is Ukraine at on infantry? Well, they're having a problem there too. They've been talking about conscription and all of this stuff. So here, all right. So Budapest, Hungary, ethnic Hungarians living in Ukraine are being enrolled in its armed forces to fight Russia. They are being conscripted, most of them against their will. These are people that live in the Transcarpathia area, which is right next to Hungary, and is a highly geographically isolated area. Something to keep in mind is that the people of Transcarpathia were brutalized during World War II and World War I by the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the German Austro-Hungarian Empire, you know, the forces. And they have been prejudiced against by Ukraine, just like the ethnic Russians have been. They are not allowed to speak Hungarian. They're not allowed to read and write or educate their children in Hungarian, display Hungarian flags. They are not allowed to have their own cultures. And yet they are being conscripted to go to the front lines and fight. And from other reports that I have heard, they have Ukraine has conscripted some of these ethnic Hungarians and with very little training sent them to the front lines, and most or all of the conscripts from certain villages have been completely just wiped out. So the entire male, breeding age male population of an entire village is just gone. That's it. They're gone. So these ethnic Hungarians have not been militarily attacked the way that the ethnic Russians in the Donbass region and Crimea, but mostly Donbass, have been attacked for the last 8 years. But what is the difference here? Because if they attacked the ethnic Hungarians, now you're dealing with a NATO, people attached to a NATO country. So, while Ukraine is trying to join NATO. And that's aside from the fact that Ukraine already had a civil war going on with the Donbass region. They didn't want to be fighting a civil war on opposite sides of the country concurrently. Let me get back to the tanks and the heavy military equipment here. So every time that Ukraine gets this equipment at the Ramstein meeting, they were promised all the infantry fighting vehicles and this stuff prior to the M1's. And then Joe Biden says he's going to give them another $2.5 billion of your money, and immediately, barely a thank you out of Zelensky's mouth before he says, "Oh, we need tanks." He gets the tanks. What's the first thing out of his mouth? I don't think he even said thank you for the tanks. The very first thing out of his mouth is, "We need F-16s." Well, nobody's agreed to give those yet, but, they'll probably be coming from somewhere because, how long have we been hearing, well, no, we're not going to send you tanks. And then, we're not going to send you this, we're not going to send you that, and then it gets sent. Or at least promised. And if they get the F-16s, they're going to say, well, we need long-range missiles. And then what's after that? We need nuclear weapons. Of course, they've already been, hinting at that already. So, it doesn't matter what Ukraine receives. It's always going to be more. But it's actually, when you look at the numbers of what's being sent to them, it's all theatrics. It's all to make it look like they're getting this massive support when, I can't think of his name, but the military commander said, I need 300 tanks and 500, infantry fighting vehicles and 700 howitzers, and and an endless supply of ammunition, and then I can beat Russia. Well, no, because you're still not going to have the people to operate it, so even that was a lie. But he said this in the interview with The Economist, with Zelensky sitting there just clammed shut. So I don't expect him to last much longer in his position or possibly even to live much longer. People are looking at him as a replacement for Zelensky already. So, what is the point of all the theatrics? You know, there are only limited options available here. You know, the West has said that, you know, Ukraine will fight to the last Ukrainian. And that's by choice or by force. So only certain things can happen. Either they are going to just trickle these things in. It's more than just training or logistics or anything like that. You know, they're just going to trickle this stuff in insufficient numbers and allow Ukraine to collapse. Or NATO is going to physically step in and actually we're going to have World War III. You know, the jury is out on whether that's going to happen. But why? Why? Why the delay instead of just jumping right in? Well, you've been hearing since March of last year how, excuse me, Russia is running out of weapons. They're running out of missiles. They're running out of tanks. They're running out of everything. It's not that they have been lying about that. They have actually believed it until recent times. And now they're just watching as Russia increases production of different things, which they can produce at least 40 of their Shahed drones per month. I think their Shaheeds, I've lost track of which ones are Iranian and which ones are Russian. They're both based on the same base model, but Russia produces their own. They can produce at least 40 of those a month, and they're increasing production. They can produce dozens of tanks per month, as opposed to 12 per month. Even if we're producing 12 a month, if Ohio can only produce 12 per month, you got more than 3 months to produce those 31 that have been promised. If those are pushed to the front of the line and other countries are put on the back burner. So that would be at least April before they could be delivered, produced, and then it still takes time to deliver them and so forth and so on, and then you got the training and all that stuff. So they've actually believed that they were going to deplete the Russian military capacity, and instead Russia increased their military capacity. They, brought in 300,000 more troops and then announced that they are increasing the size of their military to 1.5 million. So all of this stuff about, Russia's running out of everything and no, you're not going to just run in there across Ukraine. And I've pointed out before, Ukraine and Russia and China have a mutual defense agreement that if one of them is attacked, both of them will respond. So even if NATO comes in to confront Russia, they're not just going to be confronting Russia. And there are other countries that will probably be stepping in. It's not just going to be these NATO countries and the U.S. against just Russia. It's going to be, NATO, the West, against basically the entire East. So it's not going to be just one country getting dogpiled on. It's not going to happen that way. This would be a world war. This will be a world war. Meanwhile, the West is lacking industrial capacity to even support such a thing. Okay? Just consider microchips. You look at the microchip shortage and what's going on with China, and China, well, it can just stop any chips from being exported from Taiwan. So our advanced military equipment needs microchips. The support equipment for our advanced military equipment needs microchips. Well, the East will have microchips, and we will not. Any sanctions between that on microchips that China has adhered to, shipping them to Russia, is going to be out the window. They'll say, here you go. That's it. And so they keep on producing stuff, and we won't be able to do that. Our satellites need microchips. All of this stuff, everything needs microchips to function. If you just take that, look at how much rare earth minerals are needed for our advanced military equipment, and 80% of that comes from China, which China is not going to provide if we're at war with them. This cannot continue. No, we can't go into World War III. Simulations from the Pentagon have already said if we go to war with China, it'll be over in days and we'll lose. Every simulation says the same thing. Every external independent think tank that runs a simulation comes to the same conclusion. But nobody wants to hold peace talks. I've said it before, I don't want to see people die. I've never wanted to see people die. I'm against this. I've been against this since 2014. I've been against this since January of last year. I've been against this since February 24th of last year. Sit down and have peace talks. Stop killing people. Stop wiping out entire cultures. Stop destroying the entire world economy for this. All right, share this video. Talk about these subjects. If you can afford it, please donate whatever you can to help expand this channel and my presidential campaign. And I will catch you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.